When you hear about life in the Middle Ages, it sounds pretty idyllic. No smartphone, no internet, no Instagram influencers. But a simpler time also means a more dangerous time. So we're going to put you to the test. Can you survive a whole 24 hours back in ye olden times? Or will you die from disease, starvation, old men trying to milk your cow? We sent our intrepid correspondent Tilly back to the Middle Ages, and she survived an entire week. And she's here now to tell us all about it. So let's ask her a few questions. Tilly, why don't we start with breakfast? Whoa there. Hold on. Before you tuck into those medieval sausages and eggs, have you checked for poison? During the Middle Ages, most grains were grown on the same fields as animal feed. And when rye was infected with a fungus called ergot, the grain itself became poisonous, causing deadly fevers and disturbing hallucinations. Even worse, the fungus grew on flour, which meant that poisoned bread was a regular hazard. I couldn't really find any fruit or veg that wasn't moldy, so I decided to go with the fish. Oh, good choice, Tilly. Fish tends to be fresher than meat, especially when it comes to the ingredients. Yeah. But unfortunately, during the Middle Ages, the spice trade was at its peak, meaning that unscrupulous butchers could cover up the smell of rotten meat with loads of pepper, nutmeg, and cinnamon. That's funny, Tilly, because you fell right into my trap. Don't worry, I knew it was a risk, but luckily I brought some modern medicine along just in case. It's loaded with laxatives. Good one, Tilly. Hey, that joke was medieval. Wait, what do you mean? Never mind. Do you have any idea how many people died of dysentery in the Middle Ages? A third of the population perished from bacterial infection brought on by bad sanitation and contaminated food and water. Dysentery killed everyone from peasants to royalty, including Richard the Lionheart, Anne Boleyn, and Ivan the Terrible. So, Tilly, how's your stomach holding up? Hey, do you want to talk about something else? Sure. Let's discuss the air quality. Medieval towns rarely had proper sewage systems, meaning human and animal waste often ended up in the streets, making the air thick with the stench of, well, poop. Horses, cows, and sheep crowded the streets and alleys, adding to the malodorous atmosphere, as did the high number of dead bodies littering the landscape. The Black Death, bubonic plague that killed millions across Europe, Asia, and Africa, was carried by fleas living on these animals. So not only did the air stink, it was also dangerous to breathe. Luckily, I found a lovely patch of meadow full of flowers away from the busy streets, but the fresh air didn't last long. The sweet scent of the wildflowers turned out to be deadly nightshade, and the pollen turned out to be a hallucinogen. Hi guys, if you're watching this video, please stay away from pretty flowers. Whoops, how about we change the subject to bathrooms? So, medieval plumbing, huh? As a kid, I always wanted a bathroom in my house, so I'm sure I would have loved living in the Middle Ages. Hold on. Don't get too excited. Medieval bathrooms weren't exactly five-star hotel material. Most houses didn't have indoor plumbing, so residents did their business in outhouses or the street. Toilets themselves were typically shared by several families and were usually little more than a hole in the ground. There were, however, a few notable exceptions. In the grand palaces of the rich and powerful, you could find elaborate bathroom suites complete with heated floors and decorated tiles. These palaces also occasionally featured flushing toilets, but they relied on gravity rather than running water to do the dirty work. And because waterborne diseases spread through these very latrines, you could wind up dying simply by wanting to use one. If you had to use an outhouse, you'd need to bring your own toilet paper too. The roll made of hemp, flax, or wool, probably scavenged from somewhere. Newspapers wouldn't become widespread until much later in England. In France, people used a piece of wood specifically designed for the job. That's funny, Tilly. I know it is. Hey, do you want to talk about something else? Sure. What about the rule of law? So, medieval trials were not exactly fair, and sometimes innocent people were charged with crimes they didn't commit. In some cases, people were put on trial for crimes that didn't even happen yet. In England, in the 13th century, the crime of felony futre was established to try people who planned to commit felonies in the future. This was usually done with little or no evidence, and the accused person had no right to a defense. Oh, and it was also illegal to stare at the sun, break a bone in a fight, or pick someone's pocket. In France, 700 crimes were punishable by death, including sowing discord between the king and God, polluting the king's hunting grounds, or lighting a candle on Sunday. So what happens now if you steal bread to save your starving family? Well, under English law, theft was tried by ordeal. In this case, the accused would have to walk barefoot through a red-hot plowshare or have a red-hot musket fired into a tube under their arm. If they showed no sign of injury after 3 days, they were innocent. But if they developed wounds, they were guilty. Yummy. So what about women's rights? Women couldn't vote, couldn't own property, and in most cases, couldn't hold a job without their husband's permission. They were also prohibited from eating in public, even in their own homes. Women were expected to cook and serve meals to men, then eat whatever was left over in silence. One slightly redeeming feature of medieval society was that it offered women a level of protection from other women. In medieval culture, it was considered improper for men to be alone with a woman, whether married or single. This meant that women could safely travel alone, conduct business, and even own property, without fear of harassment or attack. Back then, there was such a thing as female companionship, but they didn't call it that. Instead, it was known as go-betweens. These were women who assisted in finding brides for bachelors. They also acted as chaperones, taking young ladies to social events where they would sit demurely while their go-between did all the talking. Although they weren't allowed to eat with men, women could set up their own stalls at markets and sell their wares. They could also engage in small trades, such as spinning and weaving. However, they were forbidden from trading on Sundays and holy days, and if they were caught selling substandard goods, they could be heavily fined or even imprisoned. And what about everyday life? Well, the average person in the Middle Ages believed that the world was divided into 2 spheres: the terrestrial, which included the earth, the moon, and the planets, and the celestial sphere, which contained the stars and the sun. The terrestrial sphere was seen as imperfect and corruptible, while the celestial sphere was perfect and eternal. The belief in astrology was widespread, and people believed that the position of the stars and planets at the time of their birth had a profound influence on their personality and destiny. Oh no, I just realized that my birthday is on the day the Black Plague hit London. Well, there you have it. Just a typical day in the Middle Ages. Despite the dangers and hardships of life in the Middle Ages, it was also a time of great beauty and wonder. The natural world was seen as a source of great mystery, and people had a deep respect for the balance of nature. For example, the belief in the 4 humors, which was a theory that the body was composed of 4 elements: blood, phlegm, black, and yellow bile, led to a preoccupation with balance and harmony in all things. So despite all the poop and the rats and the plagues, people in the Middle Ages still managed to find ways to appreciate the world around them. Maybe it was the wine. If you want to learn more about life in the Middle Ages, stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.